Hey guys, welcome. Fedora Friday number 20. Fedora Friday number 20. Now in the twos, right? Right, the 20 mark, whatever you however you would describe that. But it's just again hard to believe we're stacking these up, right? Before you know it, we'll be at Fedora Friday number 25 and number 50, hopefully number 50, and then 100, and hopefully forever and ever and ever. But yeah, wow, it's been a great week. You know what I mean? Been a busy week. I feel like I'm a little bit out of breath. I've been just running around trying to get things prepared for today's live stream. And yeah, it's just been very busy, but in a good way. Got my walk done today. We got some snow coming in. There's going to be, I don't know how it is but for you guys. I know the storm is going to be hitting a decent amount of the US. But here in our area, the DC metro area, it seems like we get a little extra panicky around the time when we expect snow to fall. And I'm hopefully at the very least, it's good for commerce, right? Because people go out and buy stuff in the supermarkets, and that's great. I don't like seeing some of the panic as if it's going to be the end all and be all. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be nothing, but it's just snowfall that's going to stick. It's significant snowfall. So anyway, hopefully all you guys stay safe out there, and aren't panicking, which is good. It's always good. I don't know. I don't think panic is a good state to be in. But yeah, it's been a good week. I got Puerto Rico coming up next month. I'm excited about that. Have made some of you that follow me on social media have probably seen some of my postings. I'm on the process, on the way towards my weight loss goals. So hopefully by the time I get to Puerto Rico, I'll be either at or close to that target, right? So my doctor, like I mentioned in that social media post, right in my last annual physical, my doctor mentioned, hey, it'd be nice if you go and can get down to 200 pounds. And, that used to be no problem. Just a few years back, I used to be 300 pounds. Then I went down all the way to the 160 mark. It was probably my lowest. And that was just too much. So my doctor's like, well, you don't need to go that drastic. Let's just go with the 200-pound mark for now. For me, I think my best feeling weight was something between 180 and 190. But yeah, let's first things first, right? Let's get back under 200, and then we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I think I'm roughly at around 215-pound mark. So not too much more to go. So anybody that has been rocking and watching that journey, stay tuned. Hopefully, I'll have good news in short order, right? Anyway, just to kind of just give you an update on goals and things like that. Hopefully, you guys are all having a great start. It's interesting because it's already the 23rd of January, right? We're almost already done with January. So hopefully you guys have had a good start to your 2026. I have, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. Been getting a lot more baseball content done on my other YouTube channel. I run another YouTube channel called Nova High School Baseball. And there I've been posting some Mets content with my brother. We've got 2 live stream episodes done, kind of called Subway Series, right? It's kind of a Yankees Mets kind of a podcast. And I've been doing that. Maybe later down the road, I'll decide to start a dedicated Mets channel. I also want to start a dedicated MMA channel at some point, right? I got UFC. UFC is now on Paramount, right? So all you guys that subscribe to Paramount, you're going to get a lot of the UFC events, as part of your subscription. And that's exciting. So we got a big event coming up tomorrow, UFC 324, I believe. So anybody that's a fan of MMA, I'll be right there watching alongside with you. So yeah, a lot of good stuff. This movie, I tell you, if you've been, this might have caught a lot of folks by surprise. Honestly, it caught me by surprise. I kind of always talk about how sometimes I just stumble upon these movies, and you guys know I'm a big fan of Sylvester Stallone. Obviously the Rocky series, also the Rambo series, and just so many other movies, right? Even the Expendables, those were like guilty pleasure movies for me, right? And this one was a movie that I've like seen the title of. I've never bothered to go watch it. And like I said, I consider myself somebody that's pretty well versed in the Stallone catalog. But this one just somehow escaped me. And then when I saw what it was about, I'm like, okay, there's a good chance for some hats here. And sure enough, there was. I managed to be able to watch it for free with my Roku, and man, it was enjoyable. So just to kind of give you a heads up, this really is kind of like and I'll bring up the slideshow. I don't see anybody join me yet, and that's fine. And we may not have anybody join me. That's cool. But yeah, I'll kind of just give you a little bit of a preview. Like a lot of you guys have seen some of my Fedora Fridays. I did one on The Irishman, and that obviously covered the life and times of Frank Sheeran, as well as his two friends, Russell Buffalino, as well as Jimmy Hoffa, right? And Jimmy Hoffa is the central character, right? So the character played by Stallone, Johnny Kovak, is it's really hard to argue that it's not based on Jimmy Hoffa, right? So if you watch this movie, you're going to essentially follow along a lot of things that mirror the life of Jimmy Hoffa. And again, how accurate they are, I couldn't tell you. But one thing I will tell you is that there's a lot of good hat, right? A lot of good hat action here for you guys, especially the ones that love the high crown, right? So I believe it's set in the 1930s and then takes you all the way to the 1970s. This movie came out in 1978. So it was really fun to watch. And I thought it was really well done. Right. So the idea behind it, right? So the idea behind, starting off with good intentions, right? It's like the road to hell was paved with good intentions, right? This character, right, just like a lot of folks, ends up or starts off with very noble intentions, right? He's a dock worker, essentially, kind of muscle, right? This is the 1930s. The job situation is tight, and I believe takes place in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken. Jimmy Hoffa, by the way, is from the Detroit area, so it's not exactly one-to-one, but Stallone plays Johnny Kovak, who's a factory worker, essentially the muscle, right? Essentially muscle that's there to be hired for the day. And what he's starting off is he starts off really trying to protect his fellow co-workers from the abuses of the companies that are employing these workers, right? And and even though he's not benefiting immediately, so as you can see, he starts off with the flat cap, kind of a newsboy. Hopefully, I get that right. I'm pretty sure that's a newsboy, and it looks really sharp. Again, remember, this is Sylvester Stallone pretty much right after Rocky, right? I'm trying to remember when Rocky 2 came out. Yeah, I don't know if that was before or after this, but Rocky 1, right? The original Rocky came out in 1976. So this is post-Rocky Sylvester Stallone. And I thought this was an interesting choice of films to make for somebody that had such a big success with Rocky. And you can see here, right? Again, this is his best bud. I believe his name is, what is his name? I think I'm forgetting. I think the actor is Abe, but now, or maybe the character's Abe. I forget his friend's name, to be honest. I saw this movie for the first time this morning, so some of the characters are a little bit pretty much escaping me. Besides Johnny and Anna, right? The two main characters. But yeah, he is a fellow grunt, right? And he's seeing some of the abuses, right? Like right away, you see a gentleman, right? A guy who was also in Rocky. I forget the gentleman's name, but he's a guy who's a tall African-American fellow. And then he basically says, "Hey, my name is Dombrowski. I'm Polish." And the guy that's hiring him, kind of sees that he doesn't want to share his real identity. So he says, "Okay, you come in." But Dombrowski screws up and then drops a crate, several crates of tomatoes, and then gets, essentially bullied by the worker, by the organizer, right? The organization chief or manager. And Johnny's character is watching this, and at some point, when that same manager tries to abuse him, he stands up for himself, and he kind of gets the rest of the guys that are his fellow workers to kind of throw a bunch of fish on the floor, right? It's like, we're not going to take it, and if you get too smart, I'm going to sock you. So that already starts the ball rolling, right? In terms of, his reputation, Johnny's reputation amongst his coworkers, right? And again, you see him, he's just somebody that's, a working class guy. You can see he lives with his mom. You got his buddy there. And I think they're in this particular scene, you can see the flat cap as well. But I think the buzzer that's supposed to call them into work, he ends up swiping, and he's bringing it home as a trophy to mom. So I thought that was pretty interesting. It's got a little bit of the comical moments as well in there, just like typical Stallone. But somewhat, like I said, the flat cap action here, especially initially for Stallone, and then for the fedoras around, right? You can see in here in the background, I think this is at a bar, and you can see some of the characters in the background wearing some of the fedoras. I'm telling you, if you like the hat action, this movie's going to deliver. I'll tell you that much. So you can see here that he's kind of galvanized, his coworkers, and they're kind of recognizing his level of leadership. And I think that kind of mirrors the ascendance of Jimmy Hoffa, right? Obviously, a very charismatic leader, right? Starts off with good intentions as well, and you can already know where this is going to go. If you kind of know the storyline behind Jimmy Hoffa, right? So you can see here, right? It's like, a bunch of guys. These are kind of guys that are drinking together, commiserating after work. They're arm wrestling here. So it starts off pretty like innocent, but also pretty powerful, to be honest, right? So the idea of workers standing up for each other, right? And then obviously his reputation starts getting a foothold. He gets approached about a leadership position within the union, right? By this gentleman. This is, I forget, I think his name is Max. Sorry, I'm forgetting the names of all the characters, but this character here is I believe David Huffman, to be honest, and you can see some of the fedora action. Like I said, sorry about not remember all the characters. I just watched this movie this morning, so I just thought it was just really good. In terms of the purpose of all this, so you're not going to see a lot of high level analysis here. Other than the fact that, well, if you know Jimmy Hoffa's story, you kind of know how this all ends. But you can see here some of the high crown action here that you're seeing. This is, I think, again, the late 30s, I believe, is when this starts taking place. And he gets this idea of, hey, maybe you should be a leader, right? Maybe you should start running and working for the union. And there's no pay, right? So the guy's telling him, hey, there's no pay. What we can give you is an office. We can give you a commission, and we can give you a car. And it was the car that really did it for Johnny, right? Johnny wanted to have a car, right? So what you're seeing here is some of like the initial seeds of his ambition, right? Of his wanting to have more, right? So he already knows if he has a car, he can basically use the car, and it makes him look more powerful. Right away, he's in the car and he's donning a fedora. So there you go, right there, right? We talked a lot about transformations, right? About some of the characters, right? Especially the ones that are just becoming, right? So he goes from wearing a flat cap to a full fedora, and it's a very, very fine looking fedora, right? It's not unlike a little bit of the Indiana Jones style, right? You can see right there the two front dents, right? The little point. It's got some style, and Stallone wears it well. Remember, we talked about the hat tilt from Rocky, and Johnny here wears this fedora. Now, again, this is not a stingy brim. This is an actual decent sized fedora with decent sized brim, and he wears it with style with a good hat tilt, right? So you can tell Stallone and the hat tilt. That's his thing, right? So you can see here in some other shots, of it looks, some of the black and white photos just look really sharp, right? Stallone does wear a good fedora. I'll show you another shot here. Yeah, and I don't remember these scenes from the movie. They might have been a photo shoot, but they look really good and do highlight that fedora. It just really, again, classes up Sylvester Stallone's look. Um, and then obviously Stallone starts getting his bearings right within the union. He starts getting more powerful. He starts galvanizing these workers up to the point where he essentially uses them as his muscle, right, to be able to negotiate with the organizations. Uh, um, and they had a big climactic scene, probably like an hour or so into the movie, of these union workers led by Stallone standing up for themselves with some help from some organized crime members, where they surround these police officers that are essentially on the side of the organizations, right? Some of the organization's muscle, and essentially defending themselves physically, right, to be able to get their rights. So you can see there that was a major success that kind of forced that incident, forced the organization to kind of come to the negotiation table, and that was kind of the first big win for Johnny Kovak's character. And you can already see, right, that the idea is that he's not satisfied with this. Johnny has to go further and further and further, and that becomes his undoing, right? It's kind of like very similar to like Scarface and a lot of other movies that we talked about, is that kind of that blind ambition. And all of a sudden you can see here, right, at some point he becomes so big he doesn't even need the fedora per se, right? So his look is just the slick back hairdo. It looks very Jimmy Hoffa-ish. Very interesting, to tell you the truth. Again, I am somebody that thinks of himself as in the know. I can't believe that I hadn't seen this movie up until today. It's just, where has this movie been? So I definitely recommend it. Again, you can start seeing some of the undoing of Johnny Kovak, right? He's all of a sudden he is no longer in control, right? He desires power, right? He decides to consolidate power. He gets allies in organized crime to be able to get that power. But in the end, he becomes undone by it. Essentially, he becomes isolated. And that's a kind of a very tragic figure, right? It's kind of like, you can see the mirrors to Jimmy Hoffa, but then you start seeing the Greek tragedy of all of it. And one other character here, obviously, I want to highlight here, is the love interest. This is Anna Zarinkas, played by Melinda Dillon. Very, very elegant in this movie. She is Lithuanian. And this is just another person that Johnny desires. And it's kind of cute. It starts off a little cute. It gets a little bit of creepy, at some points. But I just think that's like 70s filmmaking, and also maybe the sign of the times, right? Some of the stuff that he kind of says and does, probably a little questionable. But it is kind of like a kind of cute, right? You can see them, right? He's talking about some of the things that he wants to accomplish with the union. She obviously also works. She makes gloves. So she has her own issues at the workplace. So they're kind of commiserating, right, over an ice cream cone, a strawberry ice cream cone, and also over their big plans, right? And so he's essentially kind of gaining her interest, and she's seen, wow, this is an ambitious guy. So it is kind of lovely. And here you can kind of see the backdrop here. I don't know if they filmed this on location in Cleveland, but yeah, it's just a beautiful backdrop, I think, here in this particular scene. And then obviously Stallone with his fedora, right? This is after he's picked up the union gig, and he's dressing the part. Here's a very interesting, pretty cool scene, right? She kind of tells him, Anna tells, Johnny that, well, that you have to court me in a certain way. You have to come to my house. You have to meet my mom. You have to talk about the weather, right? And you got to bring me flowers. So I thought this was kind of a cute scene here, of him trying to pick up Anne at her mom's, at her place, with her mom answering the door and him doing small talk, right? He eventually gets to the weather because he wants to, he is very methodical, right? He's like, she wants flowers. I'm going to get flowers. I'm going to talk to her mom, like she said, and I'm going to talk to her mom about the weather. So it was kind of funny. And, at some point, he tells the mom that he loves the cold. And then Anna comes out and like, oh, gets the flowers and talks about the weather as well, and says that she loves it warm. And he says, yeah, me too. And then the mom points out the contradiction, and Johnny's just a little tongue tied. He's like, well, I like both the cold and the warm weather, and just a little bit of chuckle moment. So obviously these two get together, as Johnny grows in power, and you start seeing some of like that right, the time lapse here in some of these photos, right? He ages throughout this. They stay together, but they become isolated, and it's because of Johnny's job. Johnny, again, with the more he wanted, the more power he had to consolidate, the more characters he had to deal with, the more the opposition he had to deal with. And it was an interesting, kind of an interesting story arc, to be honest. And we had a lot of great guest appearances in here. Let me tell you, I'll show you a photo here of some of the characters here. And I don't know how many of these folks The guy in the top left, I think a lot of folks know. That's Peter Boyle. He plays Max Graham, which is one of the union officials that essentially gets on the outs and gets kicked out. Then you have on the top right, you have Tony Lobianco, who plays one of the Babe Milano, is a gangster. Then you have Richard Conway on the bottom right. He plays another gangster. I believe that's Vince he plays. And then we have Richard Hurd playing that guy that recruits Johnny into the union fold. And you can see some of the fedoras here, right? Particularly on Vince and on Richard Hurd character. Again, I forget his name. It's like the tip of my tongue, but yeah, forgive me. But you can see some of the fedoras here already in these photos. Again, this is one of the first wins, or one of the first what Johnny thought was a win, right? In his initial negotiation with an organization, he meets up with Boss Andrews, right, and strikes up what he thinks is a deal, right? And it ends up being that Boss Andrews essentially just turns his back on everything they kind of talked about. But Boss Andrews is dressed pretty sharp, right? Kind of looks like a titan of industry, and is wearing what looks like a Hamburg in this photo. I don't know. I just thought this was a character, Boss Andrews, played by James Karen. Not familiar with the actor. He kind of looks like somebody I might have seen before in a movie. Kind of has a bad guy look, right? He looks like he has one of those villain faces, but very sharply dressed. And then the gray Hamburg on top of his head kind of completes the look. So you get there's a couple other characters that wear Hamburgs in here. But I don't have photographs. This is one of those movies that, as typical from the 1970s, you don't see a lot of photos. This is probably going to be a very short episode, just FYI. But I'm going to show you all the photos that I did compile here, and there's not too many more here, to be honest. Here we have Peter Boyle's character again, another union rep. This is kind of some of the infighting that happens, right? So Johnny's character manages to, and he plays a character called Max Graham. Johnny manages to unseat Max as in his position of power within the union, right? Consolidating that power. But little does he know that was like the beginning of the end, right? Essentially, everything that Max had to deal with, he has to deal with and then some, because of the way that he went and usurped Max, right? He did it with the help of organized crime. And again, that's what slowly undid him. You can see some of the other characters that he has to deal with, a lot of titans of industry, a lot of very powerful men. And over time, you can see the aging effect, right, on Stallone's character, on Johnny Kovak. And, essentially he becomes super isolated and ultimately powerless. And at the very end, ultimately dead, right, when he was seen as useless. This is a scene. I wish I had another angle of this so you can see who Johnny's talking to, but he's talking to a character called Frank Vasco, one of the early organized crime figures or heads that he had to deal with in Chicago, right? And he's played by Brian Dennehy. And I thought that was interesting, right? Because we all kind of know the Stallone. I didn't know that Brian Dennehy and Stallone actually had this movie together before they did Rambo, right? Because Rambo came out in the early 80s, the original Rambo. And as you know, Brian Denny, he did play his nemesis in that movie, right? He played the police chief. But little did I know that they shared the screen together in this movie. So I thought he was a really cool character. Obviously, Johnny is able to nullify Frank Vasco, right? Who's essentially resisting him, right? And resisting his efforts to try to get his guys in Chicago to unionize. And again, it's kind of like a live by the sword, die by the sword situation. But yeah, it was great to see Brian Dennehy on here. So you got Peter Boyle and Brian Dennehy. I thought that was really cool. And actually, I think this might be the last shot that I have to show you. This is just a random scene here of a truck going by. You can see a flat cap from the back. I just thought it was a cool shot, to be honest. Again, there were so many more fedoras in this movie that I didn't have photos to show you of, but I definitely wanted to bring this movie to your radar to kind of say, hey, this is a movie that I don't really hear talked about. And it might be because a lot of folks don't consider it a great movie. I can see that, but I just love that Jimmy Hoffa type, that tie to Jimmy Hoffa. You guys know how much I think of the movie The Irishman. So when I saw this, I was enjoying every minute of it. Again, I'm a big apologist for Sylvester Stallone, and in the fact that they had such great flat caps, such great fedoras in this movie. I think you guys gotta check it out. Like I said, if you have a Roku, I think there's an app called Movie Hub that you can download and watch this movie for free. Otherwise, I don't know how else. I'm sure you could rent it. But I think it's worth a watch, right? If you're a movie buff, if you're a fan of organized crime films or crime dramas, particularly as it relates to unions and Jimmy Hoffa, I think it's worthwhile to watch it, and if you do, let me know how it goes, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of Fedora Friday. It's a really short Fedora Friday. Again, I'll apologize, but hopefully this will keep you wanting more. Right? We had a great Hat Tuesday. We celebrated our 100 subscribers. As you know, this fedora, I am going to give it away right now. We have several comments. I think I counted like 5 or 6 comments on that video. If you want to join that giveaway, you have until Sunday evening, right? So Monday, I'm going to look through and randomly select a comment. But find that Fedora Hat Tuesday number 20 video and then post a comment telling me what you liked about the channel so far, right? And if you can't find anything you don't like, that you like, right? It could be anything. It could be myself. It could be one of our guests. It could be a certain series, a certain episode. Whatever it is that you might have enjoyed about the channel up until this point, go ahead and post that comment on that video, and that will enter you to be randomly drawn to be able to win this Knox fedora. Now, this Knox fedora was made in Canada, likely by Biltmore in the 1960s. That's my best guess on this fedora. It's got some moth bites, but as far as I know, since it's been in my care, it's not had any new moth bites, so you shouldn't have to worry about anything like that, like moth eggs or anything like that. So yeah, that has been Fedora Friday, right? And this has been a really short one, right? I'm just under a half hour, but short and sweet, right? It's always leaving wanting more. So yeah, I think I'll end it here, right? I mean, maybe this will be the new format. We'll do some half-hour Fedora Fridays. So yeah, so go ahead and enter. Go ahead and support all of our fine folks that find their way onto the channel up until this point and may find their way in the future, right? And you know how I'm always gonna leave you, right? Or else we'll get Johnny Novak after you. Johnny Kovak, that's what it is. Johnny Kovak, not Novak. Johnny Kovak. Right? Well, you know what you got to do. Right? You gotta support the channel. You gotta support the friends of the channel. But what you gotta do most of all, right, is non-negotiable. Or again, we'll get Johnny Kovak to pay you a visit. What you gotta do is you gotta stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody. Ciao.